Hi, everyone. We're back. We've got three of our guest speakers who are coming from social development. We've got Matthew from Anglo, and Mzila from Xero, and Charles from CSIR. So I'll be asking them a couple of questions. So, hi, Matthew. I hear you've been involved in the mining industry for over 25 years now, probably as long as the South African government and the history of the mining industry in South Africa. And you guys have moved into engaging communities and changing people's lives. I want to know, how have you guys come up to this approach of developmental approach other than just mining, and why have you chosen this approach?
Hi, Mina. Yeah, thanks. It has been a long time. I've been involved, but I think I think an important part of it has been that, listen, we all re-examine what we do and why we do it. We do that as individuals, we do that as companies as well, and certainly in Anglo, our centenary in 2017 gave us a chance to do a real deep dive on that, which meant we looked at the way we did things. And as a company, we certainly recognized the need to try and accelerate how we operated smarter, how we did our business better, but also to actually examine why we were mining, right? We do at Anglo want to transform the way communities and other stakeholders experience and benefit our business. And I guess that's what we articulated in our new purpose at that time, which was to reimagine mining to improve people's lives. I guess we also, are all aware in the mining industry that we're an integral part, at least for periods of time, and they might be quite long, of an area, right? We're part of a community. Our employees, by and large, come from our communities. And we're acutely aware of the fact that those employees, those community members, as well as wider society, rightly, increasingly expects us to contribute more to the development of an area. So the mining industry, and we're no different. Yes, we're mining companies, but we're equally development partner organizations in those communities. I guess one of the things that changed the way we operate is an increased realization and acceptance, I guess, of the fact that often where mines, and our mines are, there are also areas that are often, not always, poorly developed. And they face really complex and wicked problems, and often at a very big scale. So you have high unemployment, high poverty, as we have in parts of South Africa. We've got water scarcity, we've got significant health issues. And the reality is that no policy, no government, no organization like Anglo or anybody else in the mining industry is going to be able to do things and solve that complexity, or do things at the scale to rectify that. And the truth of the matter is, the only way to do it is through more, deeper, much higher quality collaboration. And because what that does is enable us to pool resources, human resources, intellectual resources. We certainly don't have all the answers. Financial resources, but to be able to pool that so we can draw on the strengths of the individual organizations who partner, but also actually leverage the fact that we're working together. And I guess a last thing that I think we do, and increasingly people recognize, but certainly at Anglo we do, is the role of innovation, right? I talked about the fact that we're trying to mine smarter. That involves innovation in technology, but it's not only innovation in the way we mine, it's innovation in the way we try to increase the social impact we have. So the partners that we're involved with, we often are looking at new technologies to enable us to better plan what the opportunities are for social and economic development. And we think that's really important, and our experience is, if we do that sort of focusing in on the what is possible, using innovation to help us determine that, is a really good starting point for discussing how we deliver change to improve the partnership, and ultimately it leads to better trust, better projects, and of course, at the end of the day, what those lead to is exactly what we're looking for, which is improvement in people's lives.
Molo Budumzila, it's good to have you here. I hear you've been involved in the mining industry also for so many years with different things, with investment, working with stakeholders and working on sustainability and developing strategies. And also, obviously, is there a holy grail in this sustainability working? How have you learned, and what advice will you give our listeners in just engaging the stakeholders and the government and the communities? What are the do's and the don'ts? Have you found it easy? Please explain to us, and we would like also personal stories of, if you can give us some stories.
Thank you very much for that question, and good day to you and your listeners. I think one of the things I should say up front is that there's no holy grail. And the reason I say that is that, sustainability is not an event, but rather a constantly evolving activity. Just when you have reached a milestone, you then have to work at the next. And the reason for that is that the environment we find ourselves in is constantly evolving and constantly changing. But therein as well is sustainability. And to the extent that the change that happens is a positive change, that's when you really achieve sustainability. The ability to achieve that as a company depends largely on the kind of stakeholder relationships that it builds. And at Exxaro, we have been putting a lot of effort in recent years in terms of really achieving an environment of harmony and working together with our communities through a concept that we refer to as intentional engagement. And what that is, in essence, is really being clear on the intent of why we engage. And it goes back to what Matthew was saying in terms of what Anglo is doing, and its approach as well around having a positive impact and reimagining mining. And we pretty much have the same values as Anglo, as well as many other mining companies. And so intentional engagement is really that intent of making sure that what we do with community is what a community expects from us. And so it's not taking an approach where, because of the resources that we have in terms of money or knowledge or equipment or any such resources, that we know better than what the community would like to have. It is from establishing dialogue and mutual respect with communities that we then get a much better understanding of what the community needs. And it is then with that understanding that we then design our resources to meet those expectations and needs of community. And that's something that will constantly be evolving over time. Past successes are certainly not an indication of future successes. And so that ongoing dialogue with communities, and community is not a uniform description as well. It includes local government, it includes traditional leaders, and we'll take it further where we'll need to understand that community in terms of its overall demographics, in as far as youth, in as far as the impact of mining on women and children, and various other demographics that we'll need to make sure that we constantly have a pulse in as far as what their expectations are. And that approach, in my view, is what the Holy Grail is. So it is not an event at a point in time, but rather a process and a system that one puts in place of making sure that we're constantly in touch with communities, we're having dialogues, we are receiving grievances and responding to those grievances. And from various experiences that I've had, I'd say if there's one thing that has proved very successful in terms of community relationships, is being there to listen and to respond in that order. Because quite often we can be very hasty to give responses where we haven't even heard what the issue or the concern is. And one, if I can call it a trick, but rather one approach that really works all the time is one where one comes with the intent of firstly listening and then responding. And at times the response doesn't have to be immediate, but it can be after a while, where you've had to take some time out to consider what the concern is, and then develop and design an appropriate and satisfactory response to those inquiries.
Hi, Shao. It's good to have you here. I just want you to talk to us about this exciting catalyst impact that you guys are doing, where you work with different sectors, public sector, private sector, and the partnerships that you guys are working with this cool impact catalyst concept. Give us a few examples of what have you been involved in, what have been the learnings in working with different people in different sectors, and how does that help people to understand, help our listeners to understand how does it work?
So yeah, no, thank you for your question. The Impact Atlas is very exciting, and I think the Impact Atlas was born out of the need to really make a large-scale impact. What we have realized when we started looking at the current space of really corporate social investment and really socio-economic development, we realized that as individual organizations and as the state individually, we cannot really make a difference on our own. The type of problems that we are experiencing in our country really need us to take hands as public-private partners in really trying to move the needle in these communities where help is needed. So that gave birth to the Impact Catalyst, saying, well, if you really want to make a difference, we need to catalyze change through collective partnership. Partnership between different organizations in different sectors, partnership between industry and government and civil society. So pooling our resources to really try and make a difference. So when we started the Impact Catalyst, I think the most important part was designing the Impact Catalyst to really try and make a difference, because it was an actual active design process. We didn't just wake up one morning and decide we're going to create this thing. We did a bit of research to try and see, well, what is the best models to really make impact, and what is those models used across the world. And one of the models that is really making a big strides globally is the collective impact model. So the collective impact model is basically a model where different parties come together to work towards a common problem. And the Impact Catalyst was basically designed on that collective impact model.
So this question is for you, Matthew and Mzila. Can you guys take us through how have you worked out the partnership between you guys and the community, the government, but also the social impact and development of the communities that you are working with? What have been the good things that you have learned? What are the bad things that you think we should not have done this? And how can you help our listeners to navigate this process where you come to the community as an organization or as a mining industry to work with the community, and also how the listening happens? Do you listen to each other? Do they listen to you? Or is just like you need to tread carefully and figure it out as you go? If you can help our listeners as they are thinking of going to different communities, what will be the way that it gives a social impact for the long run for whatever business is around them?
Zilla, I mean, the first thing to say is it's never a done deal, right? And you can never be complacent. You can think, and you have times where you have relative harmony and you're working very closely, and an event can happen maybe related to you or something entirely different, and the situation changes. So you can never really sit back and relax firstly. You know, as an industry, mining involves really high levels of control. You have to have that control to keep people safe. And of course, as you're trying to work with people and in a collaborative way, what you're actually doing is giving up some level of control. And it doesn't come naturally to a mining company. We're getting much better at it. We certainly see the benefits, but sort of actually sitting down, collaborating, co-designing things with community as well as other stakeholders. We know the value. We know that it helps to have a new dynamic, to have fresh eyes looking at issues, and probably, you know, allowing us to see something from a different perspective. But it's not an easy thing.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And if I can add to that, there's no right place to start. But I think, you know, if one starts off at least with a basic understanding of the landscape of stakeholders that are present in that environment, and obviously depending on the nature of the activity that you're about to undertake. So if you're about to undertake a new mining operation, your approach will be different to where you're about to undertake and continue on an existing project locally. So you would have established some relationships by the time it comes to some of those small projects. But one of the important things that is emerging in our world is that I think it's important to make sure that you give jurisdiction where it's due. And what I mean by that is the role of local government, I think, needs to be acknowledged and to be respected. And as companies, we're spending more and more time beginning to understand actually what I call how government works. We can often take it for granted that we know what government does, but quite often it's a very personal view, which might be skewed as well by personal experiences in terms of you know, where you live and what you know or don't know about government. And it's important to understand the different relationships and roles of local government versus provincial versus district and versus national, but accepting that there are linkages amongst those. And also in terms of the implementation of the project, government will always have a jurisdiction at the different levels, from a local government in terms of service delivery and ongoing maintenance in as far as that service delivery is concerned. But there's also a new emerging concept in terms of the need to be actually engaging community members outside of government directly. And that's an approach where you actually need to design very carefully for in terms of who those representatives of community are, if you need to engage the representatives, or if you need to engage the whole community in a town hall situation, and be very clear on the agenda and the content of that discussion and who the different role players are. So I mentioned before that it's a very dynamic environment, constantly changing, and the experience you have in the first engagement will not necessarily determine the follow-up or subsequent experiences. And this is where ongoing dialogue is important, and really needing to have dedicated resources in as far as stakeholder management is concerned.
Hi, Charles. In closing, can you just help us to understand the benefits of partnering with other stakeholders?
It helps us to really tap into the different expertise and the different dynamics of each organization to make a difference. We have lessons learned in all the organizations as part of the Impact Catalyst, and all of them are bringing something special to the table. To support what Mozilla is saying, I think in terms of Impact Catalyst and the success stories, I think in many cases, corporates forget that it's about people. It is not just about pushing money into a space and thinking the problem is going away. If you do not take people along on the journey, you are not going to get anywhere. And you have to build those personal relationships. You have to build relationships in the communities. You have to build relationships in government and other corporates, and take people on a journey and appreciate what they bring to the table.
So I just want to say thank you, Nkosi kakhulu, for being part of this conversation. Siyabulela.